because I don't want to butcher it.
That's okay.
All right, we recording?
Yeah, we're recording.
Even the audio is working?
Everything's good.
What's up, everybody? This is Jopper Papa Pompetizite, aka with my homeboy John DeMat Maz, and we have the love of my life, the girl who broke my heart on the last podcast we had her. You know, I don't even want to introduce her. This is bullshit. You can introduce her.
Now back to shoot you down yet again.
It's our friend Steph. We've actually been becoming quite good friends through our other friend, through OMG Butter. But actually, I wanted to have Steph back on today because I finally spent the $9.99 on iTunes and downloaded her book. And I've been loving it. Joffer just kind of recently browsed over it, and I've been reading it over the past few weeks. And I just wanted to have you on so we could just talk about a few things and then talk about your upcoming projects. The one thing that I really wanted to touch base on with the Paleo athlete was your huge, kind of like you kind of revolved around a lot of performance athletes missing carbs in their diet and performance carbs, not like ice cream and Chinese food, my favorite things, but good quality carbs. And after I read through your book, I was like, wow, that's definitely something that I've been missing in my diet, because most people are like, I need to cut weight, I need to cut carbs, and then they sacrifice performance.
Yeah, how you're going to eat or prep like right before a competition might be different than what you're going to have as the foundation for your nutrition plan, like, you know, throughout your training cycle and stuff like that. But yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of kind of misconception about what's really good quality, not only just food in general, but carbohydrate and what the different roles of different carbohydrates are and stuff like that. So
Now,
yeah.
there's something interesting that I did a really quick glance of the book. Number one, I love the way you wrote it.
You write it like the way you talk, which is awesome.
Thanks.
Exactly. So it was actually kind of comforting. It wasn't like just some academic trying to put knowledge down your throat. Like, you were actually very
Sarcastic?
sarcastic, and it's a good read.
I think I used the F word a couple times, so
It's
That's
all
cool.
good. It's all good.
We're from New Jersey, so that's fine.
One thing I actually want you to touch up on, because I'm sure a lot of people, everybody's a nutritionist nowadays. So there's one thing that you mentioned about fructose not being the ideal source of post-workout carbohydrates. Now, I know right off the bat, I agree with you on that. But I know right off the bat there's going to be people reading that going, what does she know? She's a woman. But what?
What?
But can you further go into that? Because that's something I read. I was like, I want her to kind of educate people.
Yeah, so fructose is the type of sugar that we find in fruit. It's a disaccharide, so it's two sugars put together. And fructose, fructose is a monosaccharide. So it's a simple sugar. Sucrose is actually of glucose plus fructose. So table sugar is two sugars put together. But anyway, fructose and glucose are basically a single sugar each. The issue with fructose is that it preferentially is uptaken by the liver. Now, you've got glycogen storage sites, if you will, in your liver and basically in the muscle, so your skeletal muscle. The problem is when you deplete that source of glycogen through training, for example, you've just done like some real intense, like high intensity stuff, or you've just done a really super long run or something like that that's more endurance based, you're going to be depleting that glycogen in your muscle. The issue with fructose is that it's going to refill your liver first, preferentially, and not your muscle. Okay, so it's an inefficient tank. Now, is it better than eating nothing? Yes. But what we'd like to see is that people are eating better sources of glucose, so starchy carbohydrates that are then broken down into glucose, to refill the muscle straight away. It's a less stressful type of situation on the body than having to put the fructose in the liver and then reshuffle it back out to the muscle, right? And when you're training hard, especially back-to-back days, time is of the essence. So you want to refill your muscle glycogen stores as quickly and efficiently as possible so that you can not only be ready for the next training session, but less stress on your body while doing it. I want to devote as many resources to recovery as we possibly can between training sessions.
Now, what about, I know you were talking about most sugars being fructose. What about, they say, again, talking about other authors like, not to name drop, like Brandon Brazier is like, oh, have dates. Dates are, immediately glucose and they go right into your system. What do you think about that? I still think starchy carbs are the best option, but.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Again, like, would dates be a better option than a kick in the shins?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like, so if you're kind of, if you're out training somewhere that's new, or you're at an event and they've got some food that you didn't bring anything with you, like, are eating those things kind of in a pinch fine? Yeah, like, you're not going to your performance just by that one time or every once in a while. But again, it's like, how can you set yourself up for success in the long term, and like finding the best ways to refuel that are the most efficient it is going to benefit you more. Now, the issue with stuff like dates is that some people can't stop eating them because they're
just
so
sweet. Just like me looking at you, I can't stop looking at you. You're so sweet.
Rot your teeth out, right?
I know, right?
And so, like, what I'd like to see is, instead of somebody always turning to something like dates or a banana, is that we start introducing more starchy vegetables, or kind of just more starches in general, and get away from some of that fructose when you can. But as always, like, variety is really important in your diet. And I know a lot of athletes, I'm guilty of this too. There was a period of time where I only ate like grass-fed ground beef, right? Because you just kind of fall into a rut and it's easy. And if you don't have to think about what you're going to eat, you're just like, this is what I always eat. It's easy. The problem with that is that we're just limiting micronutrient profile over time. Like, you want to get as wide a variety of things as possible. So not only, if you're stuck in a sweet potato rut, try something new. Try some plantains fried in ghee with some cinnamon on it. That stuff's really good.
Yeah, something I'll never do.
You're up. No, I have a question. In your book, it was talking about white rice that is paleo, but not really paleo, and there's no paleo police. They're going to put you in paleo jail.
I'm calling Rob Wolf.
I know Rob really well.
Then I'm not calling him.
And I didn't know white rice was gluten free as well. So I mean,
gluten's gluten's a protein that you buy from wheat.
Yeah. Well, shit.
Well, yeah, I just put you on the spot. You idiot.
Grains too, like barley and oats and rye. So yeah, so white rice is definitely like a very controversial. Like, people are a lot more accepting of the idea of eating white potatoes than they are of white rice. White rice kind of has some negatives and it has some positives. So positives, it doesn't contain gluten. It's basically like a pure packet of starch. So we're talking about, right, source of glucose that's going to help you refill your muscle glycogen straight away. Like, that's it. It's just like boom, bomb of starch, and you can start to kind of refill your muscle glycogen. The bad thing is it's not very dense in nutrition, so that's kind of a negative. If we're like, okay, how can we optimize nutrient density? White rice isn't going to necessarily get us there. Is it devoid of nutrition? No, it's just not as nutrient dense. For some people, especially if they're not really insulin sensitive yet, they're still kind of dealing with some insulin insensitivity and stuff like that. White rice can really just kind of get their blood sugar completely out of whack. So if you're trying to really lose a lot of body fat, if you're dealing with metabolic issues, like, I don't think white rice is a great thing, but neither do I think that you should be smashing yourself with training if that describes you, right? Like, you've got more important priorities to take care of before you start doing that. But for people that have good body composition, they're training really hard, otherwise they're eating a wide variety of nutrient density, I don't see why white rice could be an option for people, especially since it's very convenient to eat post-workout. So call me the black sheep. I've had people write to me and tell me, how dare I say I'm paleo if I say some people might eat white rice. But I'm like, look, the type of people that I see in training, and I'm sure you guys do too, are folks that are super busy, right? They're not professional athletes in the sense that it's not their job. They're doing it on top of their full-time job. right? They've got families, they've got other commitments, and like they're still training super hard. So for them, like it's like, what are you gonna prioritize? Are you gonna say, all right, like we're gonna refuel with some white rice here, or I have to go home and like I can't cook things, and I'm dealing with my family and all this stuff. So my thing is like there is an ideal, the real life, and for people in real life, that might fit that post workout kind of niche. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Now, let's say, because I follow you on Insta Stock, and I see a lot of times that I see you lifting some heavy weight. I mean, you're awesome. I watch your videos. I'm like, man, I could have been in love with this woman. But question: how, being that you're so competitive, you're also competing in Olympic lifting. How was your diet? How do you tone it in? Like, what's a typical day of eating for you?
Good question.
And and like how much is it changing through your like competition season and then like your off season, because you're obviously not going to be eating the same way you are during training, right?
Yeah, it really depends when there's a meet. So I lifted in the Cal State Games, which is our state lifting competition, and I hadn't done a weightlifting meet in 3 years. So, I've been training through that time, and I had about 2.5 years where I was CrossFitting in between then, but it was my first meet in 3 years, so I knew I was going to have to cut about 2 kilos to make my weight class. So this is something that, you guys, your audience is very familiar with.
Yeah.
It's weight classes and weight cuts and stuff like that. So leading up to the meet, a few weeks out, I knew 2 kilos is about
5 pounds.
4.5 pounds, 5 pounds. It's not a huge amount, but basically cut back on my starch and carbohydrate intake. So I normally kind of cycle my carbs. Like some days I'll be really low carb, not on purpose, but just because I don't feel like I
worked out hard enough.
Potato or fruit or stuff like that. And then some days, I incorporate those types of things. But leading up to the meet, I cut out all starchy veggies, all kinds of starch in general. So like no rice, no other sources of starch, and focus mostly on green veggies and stuff like that. So that was one thing. The second thing was I just cut back a little bit on intake. Normally I don't count calories. I don't count what I put on my plate in terms of macros, but I did kind of reduce my volume of intake just a little bit. And I was experimenting and playing around with some kind of like water protocols and trying to like hyperhydrate.
Oh, I could have helped you with that.
Which didn't actually work. And
did you sodium overload?
No.
Oh, there you go. Dun, dun, dun.
But then I did. So it's interesting though. I think so. Next year I'm going to do this presentation in New Zealand for the Ancestral Health Society there, and I think my focus is going to be women and weight cutting, because we've got some differences compared to guys, like in terms of physiologically how weight cuts work.
Simple enough. Your menstrual cycle throws everything for a loop.
You're completely fucked. Like
yeah.
So anyway, that kind of digresses. But like normally I eat a pretty balanced plate of protein, veggies, some fruit, maybe like once or twice a day, especially in the summer. I love berries, and berries are one of the best fruits you can possibly eat. They're super packed with nutrition. So in the sun, you eat some more berries than the rest of the year, or sweet potatoes or plantains, stuff like that. And then healthy fats, and that's what a typical meal will look like. Because we train at noontime, I'll have a large, like as much as I can eat comfortably, breakfast at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And then we'll go train at noon. I'll come back, I'll have a little bit of like post-workout, and then I'll try to eat a small thing like after I train, and then I'll eat a relatively normal sized dinner. So I don't do anything that's really like, there's no witchcraft involved. It's just like take a plate, fill it halfway with veggies, and then put a big hunk of meat on there and some fat, and like you're good to go. I mean, it's not anything complicated. But for weightlifting, I find I don't need as many carbs as I did when I was CrossFitting, simply because we're doing 3 lifts and sitting down, It's, we're relying mostly on ATP for our lifting instead of glycogen. So there's still demand on the CNS for glucose there, but it's not as intense as something like CrossFit.
So now, when is your next competition, and how are you prepping for it?
I'm so sad to tell you this, but a couple of days ago, USAW came out with a revision to their rules for the American Open. So
Those bastards.
At the meet a couple weeks ago, I qualified for the American Open in December in DC. But because their membership of USAW has grown by about double in the last 2 years, the last meet, which was nationals that they had up in Salt Lake City, was about 400 lifters, and it was just too much for a double platform, kind of 3-day meet. So they ended up just 2 days ago changing the qualifying rules. Like they didn't raise the qualifying minimum, but they were like, okay, listen, we're only going to take X amount of lifters, and then if your percentage, basically the lower your percentage over the qualifying total, they're like there's probably not a chance you'll get it. So at this point, I may do a local meet in the fall. We've started a new training cycle after the meet. So last week was kind of a deload week for us, lighter weights and just kind of doing some not fun stuff like lots of RDLs and pulls and shit like that. And then
wait, so now because they decided to change the rules, it took you out of being qualified.
You weren't grandfathered in because I guess you didn't have enough competitions previously.
I'm gonna write a letter to the NAACP about this.
ACLU.
Yeah.
So basically, they capped the event at a certain number of people, and they're only taking a certain number per weight class. And because I only made the qualifying total by it was over by 1 kilo. If my qualifying total was 15 kilos over, I'd probably have a better shot of making it.
Yeah, but that's still that's lame. That's lame on their part.
I get it. I wish they had waited till next year, but so I'll probably do a local meet in the fall. And then next year, the big goal at this point, they changed the rules for nationals. They increased the qualifying total in my weight class by about 13 kilos. But I'd love to qualify for nationals next year, if not Masters nationals, because I am technically a Masters athlete as a weightlifter. So
is Masters basically by age?
Is it 30?
Yeah, 35 and up.
35 and
Wait.